Hey everyone, so you've been digging deeper into Bitcoin lately, and you sent over some really fascinating articles about market cycles and Donald Trump.
Yeah,
Get ready because this deep dive is about to get really interesting.
definitely.
We're looking at an article called Was Trump's Inauguration Day the Beginning of the End for Bitcoin? That's a pretty provocative title.
Yeah, it is.
So did Trump's policies actually hurt Bitcoin despite some of his pro-crypto statements?
Well, it's a complicated question.
Let's see if we can unpack it.
Let's do it.
One of the things the article talks about is this idea of a sell the news phenomenon, where Bitcoin's price peaks on the anticipation of big events
Right.
and then drops when they actually happen.
Yeah.
The article uses a couple of interesting examples,
Right.
like Coinbase going public in 2021 or the Bitcoin ETF launches in early 2024.
Oh, interesting.
Both of those saw like a surge in price leading up to the event and then a dip afterward.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed this pattern in the market?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's pretty common.
So let's apply this to the Trump presidency and his impact on Bitcoin.
Okay.
Because I remember there was a lot of excitement around his pro-crypto promises during his campaign.
Right. A lot of buzz.
Like when he talked about making the U.S. a global crypto hub or even incorporating Bitcoin seized by the government into national reserves.
Those were pretty bold proposals.
They were.
It definitely got people talking.
And Bitcoin's price was climbing as his election drew closer.
Yeah, it was definitely on an upward trend.
And then, boom, Inauguration Day.
He breaks $100,000.
Even peaked at over $109,000.
It's really fascinating how sentiment can shift so rapidly in the crypto market.
Yeah.
Like early enthusiasm for a political figure doesn't always translate to sustained price growth.
Right, so we had all this excitement, and then what happened?
Well, then things took a turn.
Okay.
Bitcoin plummeted almost 30% in the weeks following the inauguration.
Wow. I hadn't realized the drop was that significant.
It was a pretty dramatic shift.
What do you think about why the market reacted so strongly? Was it just the sell the news effect, or were there other things going on?
Well, the article argues that some of Trump's policies might have contributed to the downturn.
Okay, how so?
For instance, his trade wars and the tariffs he imposed, they created a lot of global economic uncertainty.
Right.
And when there's uncertainty, investors tend to become more risk-averse.
That makes sense.
They shy away from volatile assets like Bitcoin.
So people were worried about the economy and pulled back from riskier investments.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just the tariff.
Right.
The article also mentions Trump's involvement in the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
Yeah, which also fueled global instability.
And that kind of volatile geopolitical landscape can really spook investors.
Oh, absolutely.
So it sounds like even though Trump had this pro-crypto rhetoric,
Yeah.
his presidency might have inadvertently created a less favorable environment for Bitcoin.
It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
It just goes to show how intricately connected global events are to crypto markets.
Yeah, it's fascinating how something like a presidential election
Right.
or a trade war can ripple through the financial world and impact something as seemingly separate as Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that the crypto market doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It's influenced by so many different
The
factors.
complex web of factors.
It's from political decisions to global economic trends.
Exactly.
All right, so we've seen how sell the news and some of Trump's policies might have contributed to Bitcoin's dip after his inauguration. But what about those big pro-crypto promises he made?
He said promises.
Making the U.S. a crypto hub, stopping the sales of confiscated Bitcoin.
Did any of that actually happen?
That's where things get even more
Let's
interesting.
dive into that.
So we were just talking about those big pro-crypto promises and whether any of those actually came true, like making the U.S. a crypto hub or stopping the sales of confiscated Bitcoin.
What the hell with those ideas?
Well, that's where things are even more interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
So remember Senator Lummis?
Yeah. She was a big advocate for those proposals.
Right. She saw a lot of potential for the U.S. to lead the way in the crypto space. I remember she's pushing for things like a regulatory sandbox for crypto businesses.
That's right.
But I also remember that not everyone was on board.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't Fed Chair Powell express some reservations about those ideas?
He did. He was definitely more cautious.
So you had this kind of tug of war between pro-crypto voices like Loomis
Yeah.
and more traditional institutions like the Fed.
Right. A classic clash of perspectives.
What was the outcome of all that?
Well, unfortunately for Bitcoin enthusiasts, those promises ultimately went unfulfilled during Trump's presidency.
So despite the initial optimism,
Yeah,
those bold ideas never turned into concrete action.
that's right. But this tension between pro-crypto advocates and established financial institutions is still something worth paying attention to.
Okay, why is that?
Well, it's a dynamic that continues to play out even today,
Uh-huh.
and it will likely shape the future of crypto regulation.
So we're seeing this struggle between innovation and tradition play out in real time,
Exactly.
and the outcome of that has big implications for Bitcoin's trajectory.
Not just in the U.S., but globally.
Okay, so while Trump's presidency might not have brought about the crypto revolution that some people were hoping for,
Yeah.
it definitely highlighted this growing tension between the old and the new in the financial world.
Absolutely. And that tension is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding Bitcoin's price fluctuations.
Right. The article also mentions other factors that could impact Bitcoin's price.
Oh, like what?
Things like inflation rates, interest rate cuts, even the ongoing trade war tensions we were talking about earlier.
All of those play a role.
So even if we set aside the whole political drama,
Right.
there's a whole bunch of economic forces at play that can influence Bitcoin's value.
It's a complex picture for sure.
It seems like it. But before we get too overwhelmed,
Right.
let's try to break down these economic factors one by one.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's start with inflation. How does something like rising inflation rates impact Bitcoin?
Well, that's a great question. And it leads us into this fascinating discussion about Bitcoin's potential as a hedge against inflation.
I'm ready to dive into that. Let's unpack that in the next segment. All right, so we're back and ready to tackle that final question from the article.
Okay.
The one that asks us to imagine a world where the U.S. goes all in on crypto and becomes that global hub that Trump talked about.
Right, that's a big one.
What do you think the implications of that would be?
Well, it's a question with huge consequences.
Yeah.
It touches on everything from global finance to geopolitics.
So if the U.S. were to really become a leader in the crypto world,
Yeah.
how might that shift the balance of power?
Well, one thing to consider is the U.S. dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's the world's reserve currency.
Right.
But if crypto like Bitcoin gains widespread adoption,
Okay.
it could reduce our reliance on traditional currencies.
And the institutions that control them.
Exactly.
So we're talking about a potential shift away from a dollar-dominated world towards a more decentralized financial system.
Where crypto plays a central role.
What would that mean for the U.S.?
Well, it could be both a challenge and an opportunity.
How so?
The U.S. would need to adapt and innovate to stay influential in this new landscape.
Right.
But it could also benefit from being at the forefront of this technological shift.
It could attract investment and foster innovation within its borders.
Exactly.
It's almost like a race to the future.
Yeah.
If the U.S. embraces crypto, it could set the standards for this new financial order.
Right.
But if it hesitates, it risks falling behind other nations who are more willing to jump in.
Absolutely. And this race has implications beyond just finance.
Okay, in what way?
Think about geopolitics.
Huh?
If crypto reduces reliance on the dollar,
Yeah.
it could weaken the U.S.'s leverage in international affairs.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
So much of global politics is tied to economics.
Right.
So a shift in financial power could have ripple effects on everything.
From trade agreements to military alliances,
It's hard to predict all the ramifications.
it really is.
But it seems clear that the rise of crypto has the potential to disrupt the existing world order.
Oh, absolutely. It's a major force to be reckoned with.
It is a bit overwhelming to think about all the possibilities,
Yeah.
both good and bad.
It's a lot to process.
But it's also exciting to be witnessing this transformation in real time.
Definitely, we're living in a historic period.
We are. You know, one thing that strikes me is that despite all this talk about presidents and global events,
Yeah.
it seems like Bitcoin's value is ultimately determined by the people who choose to buy, sell, or hold it.
That's a really crucial point.
It is. While macroeconomic factors and political decisions can influence the market, it's the collective actions of individual investors that really drive Bitcoin's price.
It's like a giant decentralized voting system.
Yeah.
People are voting with their money.
Expressing their confidence or lack of confidence in Bitcoin's future.
Exactly. And that collective sentiment, that belief in Bitcoin's potential, that's a powerful force in the market.
So even if presidents come and go, trade wars flare up and subside,
Right.
it's that underlying belief in Bitcoin, that shared vision, that could determine its long-term success.
I think that's a really insightful observation.
And that brings us back to those unfulfilled promises from Trump's presidency.
Yeah.
While they didn't happen then,
Right.
the ideas they represented.
The vision of a world where crypto plays a major role in the financial system.
Yeah.
Those ideas are still very much alive.
That's an encouraging thought. So despite the ups and downs, the roller coaster of prices, the political uncertainties,
Yeah.
Bitcoin's story is far from over.
Not even close. The technology's evolving, new applications are emerging, and the debate about its role in the future of finance is just heating up.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From Trump's inauguration to inflation hedges to trade wars and back to the core ideas behind Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating deep dive.
It really has. It's given me a much deeper understanding of how all these pieces fit together.
I'm glad to hear that.
Me too. I think our listeners will find it really insightful as well.
I hope so.
Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
It has been. It's been a really enlightening conversation, and I'm sure our listeners are walking away with a lot to think about.
I hope they are.
Until next time, everyone keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions.